Back now with the former Attorney General Bill Barr. And since we have last spoken on this program, Trump is now facing a superseding indictment in the documents case, which means more charges have been added. You know, you thought it was a serious case before. Now that these other charges have been added, do you believe it's even stronger now?
Oh yeah, it's definitely more stronger. The allegation of another kind of cover-up and obstruction attempt after getting a subpoena for the surveillance tapes, then entering into a conspiracy to delete the surveillance tapes. So that certainly buttresses the government's case. And it's also quite typical in this sense. You know, these two individuals, Nauta and Carlos, are dragged into this thing, their lives turned upside down by Trump to pursue, this caper of his. And he leaves in his wake ruined lives like this, the people who went up to Capitol Hill, these individuals, many of the people who served him in government that got sucked into things. And he just leaves all this carnage in his wake.
Do you think he cares about that?
No, he doesn't care about that. Loyalty is a one-way street for him. And in many ways, you know, I think these two people down in Mar-a-Lago represent many Republicans who feel that they have to man the ramparts and defend this guy no matter what he does and go along with him. And I think they have to be careful or they're going to end up as part of the carnage in his wake.
That's what your message is to those people who do feel that sense of loyalty to him?
I think we all have primary loyalty to the Constitution and the country, not to any particular individual. And, you know, at some point, trying to defend the indefensible really demeans you.
He always says he had a right to declassify the documents or take them with him. I mean, if he really thought that, why would he ask someone to delete security surveillance footage?
Well, yeah, but not the whole thing. If he really thought he had the right to have the documents, there were umpteen ways for him to assert that when he was asked by the government and during that 1.5-year period. He never did. He never asserted it in a lawful way. What did he do? He obstructed the subpoena and both subpoenas.
You've said before that at its core, this is an obstruction case because you say, you know, if he gave the documents back, he would have never been indicted. But what do you say to Republicans, and this includes 2024 GOP candidates who say it's unfair for him to be prosecuted for that? They say it's a process crime.
It's hogwash. I mean, this is a grand jury subpoena asking for the documents, and he makes his lawyer, puts his lawyer in a position of making a false statement that a full search was made when he knew it wasn't, and in fact prevented the lawyer from making it. I mean, that's the essence of obstruction of a grand jury. It doesn't get more serious than that.
What would you say? He just brought on 2 new attorneys, Todd Blanche in April, John Lara just now. I mean, given what has happened with other attorneys that he's had, what's your advice to his attorneys? Do you have any?
Get a lot of insurance. They'll be spending a lot of time themselves at some point, before grand juries or answering questions or as witnesses in investigations.
He's spending a lot of money on legal fees, too. His political action committee spent more than $40 million on legal fees already this year. I mean, what do you make of his supporters, his political supporters, giving him money to his campaign, and he then uses that for his legal fees and his co-defendants' legal fees?
Yeah, I find that sort of nauseating. I mean, this guy claims to be a multi-billionaire, and he goes out and raises money from hardworking people, small donors, and tells them this is to defend America and to, take care of the election. He didn't provide any significant support during the 22 elections, and a lot of this money seems to be going to his legal fees.
You just mentioned earlier you don't believe in the weaponization of the Justice Department. That's something we often hear from members of Congress who are loyal to him after he gets indicted in these cases. I mean, does that undermine trust in the department that you used to lead?
Does what undermine it?
When Republicans come out and say, this is a two-tiered justice system.
No, I mean, I do think, I do think that there is a double standard. I think it's sometimes.
From whom?
I think that the department tends to go far more aggressively after Republican or allegations of Republican wrongdoing than Democrat, and I've seen it myself. I've lived through it. I've seen it. Now, it's not as pervasive as is represented, it's not automatic. And I think there's still many great prosecutors in the department who can check their politics and be fair to whoever it is, regardless of their politics. But I do think that there's some political actors in the department, and I'm glad that Chairman Comer is conducting his investigation.
Well, speaking of that, one thing we've heard is that you mentioned Hunter Biden earlier. David Weiss, the Trump-appointed U.S. attorney who's handling that investigation, did you ever consider making him special counsel before you left office?
Yes, I did consider it, but I felt that a couple of things. One, I didn't want to set a precedent of setting, on the way out the door, of appointing a special counsel to investigate essentially, the children of the incoming president and the family of the incoming president. I think that would become sort of de rigueur, and it would be a bad development. Second, I didn't think there was a basis for me to do it because our department didn't have a conflict of interest. And it had to be left up to Garland to make that decision for his department. He had to determine whether he had a conflict and he should bring in a special counsel. And if I preempted that decision, I thought it would give them the basis for saying this was a political move and we're going to terminate him. We're just going to kick it out, and it would have given them cover, I think, to end the investigation. I believed he would keep the investigation going and keep Weiss in place, and he did.
Trump has promised that if he gets back into office, he's very blatant about this, about using the Justice Department to go after his political opponents. Do you worry that he would weaponize it if he was back in office?
Absolutely, and that's why I think it's so ironic all these people are getting huffy about weaponization, which they should, because we can't go tit for tat. But Trump, as you say, I mean, he's very clear about it. I think there's no question that he believes these institutions should be used to go after his enemies.